Okay, so let's react to these teams for Saturday. I've already had a look at the England team because that came out on Tuesday, so do check out Tuesday's video for my reaction to England. But let's get stuck into them, starting with the Welsh team to face Japan in this must-win game. And Steve Tandy has made minimal changes to this team, which makes sense because he wants to start out consistent, especially with this big game coming up. I think there's some big holes in this team, and I think going forward, I think it might change, but I understand why he hasn't changed a lot. If you actually selected this team for my starting lineup, well done. You're going to win Six Nations tickets. Let me know if you do, because we had a winner for the Welsh selection last week. But let's have a look at what he's done. He's changed the props over. So Smith and Griffin starting, and then Carey and Azarati coming on. Is that the slightly quicker prop starting, maybe? Is that the reason? I think it could be. Smith and Griffin, the scrum struggled a bit when they came on. Not quite sure why. Some people mentioned Belcher was the problem. I don't know, but I don't think they'll have a problem in the scrum. And starting with your quicker front row maybe is a good call. But he hasn't quickened up the second row. Beard stays, who was okay, I guess, last time out, but pretty slow, pretty ponderous, but he is big. Sticking with Jenkins and Beard and Freddie Thomas coming on. He could have put Freddie Thomas to start, and that would be a much quicker second row. The back row, of course, Morgan is out, which is a massive shame. He has just called a 7 into the squad, but that would be a push putting him straight in. I wanted Cracknell to start anyway in the last game, so I think him and Wainwright, that is big carrying. Man's a very physical player as well. Over the ball might not be quite as good, and will they be as good at slowing down Japan's quick phases, which is how they play, so that could be an issue. The backline, though, is sticking pretty much as is. The only change expected, and Reece Sammet coming in. And I think the only reason he was on the bench last time was to get him minutes, to get him starting. I don't think it was tactical having a winger on the bench, and this time we see a centre on the bench, which makes a lot more sense. My big worry is in the centres. Ben Thomas and Llewellyn, I think, going forward, are they world-class centres? I don't quite see it, but in this game, it should be too much. I think Wales will win fairly well, and I can understand why he's made minimal changes to that team. Let me know if you've done anything differently. Then let's have a look at the All Blacks team to face England. Like I said, I've already reacted to the English team, and there's a couple of changes to this team, but I think the English team will be fairly happy with the changes. What they've done is they've slotted Parker back into 6 instead of Satiti, which I think they'll be much happier dealing with Parker, who's a hard worker, but he's not going to make those big breaks like Satiti. On the bench, though, it is very dangerous for New Zealand there. Williams, Tossi, Takiaho, the front row coming on. Massive, explosive. Satiti as well. McKenzie. So plenty on the bench, but starting-wise, I think they will be happier with containing Parker. Lakai, big guy, very good defensively, but again, Satiti would have created a different dimension. Good news for New Zealand, though, that Scott Barrett is back in. So Barrett and Holland, the big boys there. Then Roygaard, Barrett, as expected, but a change to the centres. Clark is out, which means Fainga'anuku's kind of like for like, power for power, but it does mean it depowers the centres a bit. Proctor, a great all-rounder, but not as dangerous running-wise as Fainga'anuku. Tapia, Proctor, again, England I think will be much happier containing, especially when England's midfield isn't the most settled. Dingwall, Lawrence, I think they're a much better matchup for Tapia and Proctor than Fainga'anuku in the centres, or indeed Geordie Barrett, who's still injured. So I think England will be happy enough with that team. Of course, it's incredibly dangerous. 50-50, anyone could win this one. Cannot wait for that game. Moving on to Italy versus the Springboks. For Italy, hardly any change because they did pull off a massive win against Australia, so you wouldn't expect any change there particularly. South Africa, all changed from their last game. They are really ringing all the changes. A couple of really interesting things of note. There's only 2 front row on the bench, which looks like Van Staden, the number 8, will be covering hooker. So that's really fascinating that always South Africa are kind of leading the way in flexible players, and that is another one. Only 2 front row on the bench. You literally hardly ever see that. Then Norkia is covering second row. Esterhuizen is in there above Smith. So again, really trying this flexible centre/back row combination. Very interesting. Smith there probably down as an 8. It looks like Esterhuizen down as a flanker cover. And then Williams, Libbok, 2 very quick backs to come on. Another player of interest is Dixon, who was kind of shaped as one of these Peter Steph-Tory replacements, but hasn't really broken onto the scene. Can he come back in there? Pollard there as the old head. Arenza's surrounded by loads of new guys there. Hooker's having a go at centre. We've got Moody back at 13. Van der Merwe on one wing. Willems is staying at 15. So a couple the same, but really they're just ringing the changes, get everyone some game time. Will Italy see this as an opportunity? Well, maybe, but it's going to be incredibly exciting. You would expect South Africa to win by the sheer talent they have, but Italy are a very tidy side. Then finally on to Ireland versus Australia. Fascinating game here. Ireland have made some rotations for sure. They've had some injuries. Baird staying at 6. Doris goes to 7 for a rare outing, captaining the side. Conan back in at 8. A very exciting looking pack. Look at it up against Australia there. They're starting Bell. I think he's an absolute firecracker there at Loosehead. A change in the second row. You don't often see Frost not starting, who is their go-to line-out guy. So maybe they'll target that, but a bit maybe quick around the park with Williams and Hooper. Valentini, McWright, Wilson, very dangerous back row. Half-back wise and some changes there, particularly at 10. O'Connor in for the Wallabies, so he's going to be exciting. And I thought it was going to be Crowley starting again, but no, they've rotated it, giving Prendergast another crack. So the battle continues. Do they need to nail down who is the first choice, or do these guys just keep on rotating for, years to come? Who knows? But Prendergast getting the crack there. McCloskey, Henshaw changed in the centres. Stronger, though, for the Australians, you'd think, with Ikitau and Salihi. Ikitau back, that is their best centre pairing. And Jorgensen very quick at 15. Potter was brilliant in the last match. Dangunu very powerful. It looks in the backline maybe Australia have the edge. Tommy O'Brien's been impressive on the wing, and Hansen's been slotted in at 15 for the injured Osborne. So there are some changes there, absolutely. Australia have been a bit disappointing so far, so they're going to want to prove a point, and I think there is a chance here against Ireland. Ireland, a lot to prove. They've made some rotations. Can they get a good performance? If they're stuttering or even lose, then maybe people will say they shouldn't have made a load of changes, but it's going to be fascinating. Cannot wait for that game and all of them. Let me know down below what you think of those teams, and I'll catch you next time.